and so the case is not yet subject to sub judice resolution. However, it is reasonable to expect charges soon, and I urge all honourable members to exercise care not prejudice any future trial by what they say. Honourable members will also wish to know that we will observe a minute's silence tomorrow at 11 a.m. to remember the victims of this event. I now call Secretary of State Priti Patel to make a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll make a statement on the senseless terror attack which took place in Reading on Saturday evening. This appalling attack is now subject to an ongoing police investigation. As such, there are limits as to what I can say, but I want to share as much detail as I can with the House this afternoon on behalf of the police, following my conversations with them over the weekend and my visit to Reading this morning. At around 7 p.m. on Saturday evening, a 25-year-old male entered Forbury Gardens in the centre of Reading and began to viciously attack several groups of people. The outstanding police officers from Thames Valley Police responded with great courage and great speed. The armed suspect was tackled to the ground by an unarmed officer and was immediately arrested at the scene. The suspect remains in custody. After initial investigations, Counter-terrorism policing declared the attack a terrorist incident and are now leading the investigation. Police have confirmed that the threat is contained, but that sadly 3 innocent members of the public were killed, murdered by a sudden and savage knife attacker as they enjoyed a summer evening with friends. Another 3 victims were injured and received hospital treatment. My thoughts and prayers are with the family and friends of everyone who was hurt or killed as a result of this sickening attack. The Victim of Terrorism Unit at the Home Office and family liaison officers are supporting them. And I know honourable members from across the House will join me in sending our heartfelt condolences. Mr. Speaker, it was truly humbling to visit Thames Valley Police this morning. I had the privilege of meeting the officers who first responded to the incident and who were responsible for apprehending the suspect, as well as trying to prevent the loss of further life. These officers, a few of whom were student officers, ran towards danger to help those in need without a second thought. A young unarmed police officer took down the suspect without hesitation, while another performed emergency first aid to those who were injured. These officers are heroes. They showed courage, bravery, and selflessness way beyond their years. They are the very best of us. I would also like to pay tribute to the response of every emergency service that attended the scene, as well as members of the public who stepped in to prevent a further loss of life. Mr. Speaker, the United Kingdom has the best security services and police in the world. Since 2017, they have foiled 25 terrorist plots, including 8 driven by right-wing ideologies. They serve the country with professionalism and courage, embodying what the British public rightly expect from those in the front line of the battle against violent extremists and terrorists. The UK's counter-terrorism strategy remains one of the most comprehensive approaches to countering terrorism in the world. But over recent decades, we have all too often seen the results of poisonous extremist ideology. The terrorist threat that we face is complex, diverse, and rapidly changing. It is clear that the threat posed by lone actors is growing. These terrorists are united by the same vile hate that rejects the values that our country holds dear: decency, tolerance, and respect. And we are united in our mission to tackle terrorism in all its forms. Since day one, this government has backed our police and security services, who work around the clock to take down terrorists and violent extremists. On any given day, they make a series of calculated judgments and decisions on how best to protect our citizens and country, based upon the intelligence that they gather. In light of the many complexities across the security, intelligence, and policing communities, in January this year, I announced increased resources for counter-terrorism policing, resulting in a £90 million increase this year alone. This has taken counter-terrorism policing funding to over £900 million, the highest ever. And this is because we live in a complex world, against a backdrop of evolving threats and dynamic threats. Threats that, when they do materialise, are worse than shocking, as they result, as we have seen again this weekend, the tragic loss of life. Bolstering our security and policing network and frontline capability is part of our ambitious programme to strengthen the joint working between the police and security services, to leave terrorists with no place to hide. It is also why we are committed to developing a new Protect duty, so that businesses and owners of public places must take into account the threat of terrorism, and why, following the shocking attacks of Fishmongers Hall and Streatham, we took strong and decisive action. Action which included the introduction of the Terrorist Offenders Restriction of Early Release Act, the emergency legislation which retrospectively ended the automatic early release for terrorist offenders, serving standard determined sentences, forcing them to spend a minimum 2/3 of their time behind bars before being considered for release by a parole board. And through our Counter-terrorism and sentencing bill, which enters committee stage in this House this week, we are introducing much tougher penalties for terrorists to keep the public safe. This is the biggest overhaul of terrorist sentencing and monitoring in decades, strengthening every stage of the process, from introducing a 14-year minimum jail term for the most dangerous offenders to stricter monitoring measures. And Jonathan Hall QC is looking at how different agencies, including the police, probation services and security services, investigate, monitor and manage terrorist offenders. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I totally understand the desire for details and information to enter the public domain, particularly at this particular time, as to what happened and why. But as you, Mr. Speaker, has pointed out, I would ask everyone, including the media, to be cautious at this stage about reporting on individuals who have not been charged. We must not do anything that could risk the victims or their loved ones from achieving justice. Mr. Speaker, the first duty of any government is to protect the people it serves. And so we continue to pursue every option available to tackle the terrorist threat and to take dangerous people off our streets. As the Prime Minister reiterated yesterday, the police and security services will continue in their investigations to better understand the circumstances of this tragic incident. And if further action is needed, we will not hesitate. Our world-class CT police and security services have my unequivocal backing as they hunt down hate-fueled terrorists and extremists. So my message today is clear, simple and strong. Swift justice will be done, victims will be supported, and if further action is needed to stop terrorists in their tracks, this government will not hesitate to act. I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Home Secretary Nick Thomason.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the Home Secretary for advance sight of her statement and her briefing call over the weekend. Like the whole House, I was shocked and appalled by the scenes we saw in Reading on Saturday evening. Whilst doing no more than visit a beautiful park, 3 innocent people were stabbed to death and another 3 seriously injured. Today, we remember those who have died, and our thoughts and condolences are with their families and friends at this moment of terrible loss. We send best wishes to those who are injured, wish them a swift recovery, and thank our magnificent NHS staff for the care they are providing. The incident was one of senseless violence. And as always, we are indebted to our outstanding police officers and other emergency service personnel for their swift response and work at the scene, helping others by putting themselves in danger. They represent the very best of us. We thank them and the public at the scene who assisted and recognise their courage and their bravery in this most awful of situations. We now know that this has been declared a terrorist incident, and I know that the whole House will support the police as they carry out the highly detailed, careful investigation that is necessary with an incident like this. I hope the Home Secretary can confirm that all necessary resources will be made available to Thames Valley Police and to counter-terrorism policing. I'm sure the Home Secretary will also agree with me that whilst there are quite understandably many questions about this specific case, the best thing to do is to give the police the space they need to conduct the investigation and to establish the facts, and not to indulge in unhelpful speculation. I'd also like to thank my honourable friend, the member for Reading East, for his calm, measured leadership in such a difficult moment. It is heartbreaking that we are having this conversation again, so soon after the terrible attacks at Fishmongers Hall in November that tragically took the lives of Jack Merritt and Saskia Jones, and the attack in Streatham in February. This is a live investigation, as you have said, Mr. Speaker, so we have to ensure there is due process and that the police can do their job. But the country will want answers about these incidents, which have occurred in such quick succession. So whilst the priority today must be to ensure that there are no further related threats and that the victims and families are cared for, it is vital that questions are addressed. I hope the Home Secretary will confirm that she will further update the House on this awful incident and the lessons that need to be learned, but there are some matters I would like her to deal with today. The Home Secretary mentioned the emergency piece of legislation in February, and there is another bill on counter-terrorism going through the House at present with cross-party cooperation. I hope any further legislation can be on a cross-party basis as well. But does the Home Secretary also agree that legislation alone is not enough? We need a comprehensive look at de-radicalisation in our prisons, how people who pose a threat are risk assessed, and how different agencies can work together to safeguard against tragedies in the future. Community police are the eyes and ears of our society. The intelligence gathering they do is vital. And can the Home Secretary assure me that the government will never again cut the numbers of community police and will instead build the capacity that's required for law enforcement? Can she also assure me that the Serious Violence Task Force, which has not met since 26th of June last year, will meet soon and on a regular basis? She rightly praised, Mr. Speaker, the Intelligence and Security Services, but we know that the Intelligence and Security Committee has not met for over 6 months. Can the Home Secretary confirm when the committee will have all its members in place and exactly when it will meet next? Finally, Mr. Speaker, I know there will be many issues in the weeks ahead, but let the message go out from this House today that we stand alongside the wider community in Reading at this dark moment and say that those who have lost their lives will never be forgotten.
Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for his comments and his thoughtful remarks in terms of Reading as a community. And following my meeting this morning, I did meet with the member for Reading East and made exactly the same point about working unitedly at a community level, multi-faith with all organisations, because that's really important, not just now, but in terms of going forward, to ensure that people are remembered in the right and appropriate way, but also that we support the community at this difficult time, which is something that we all do. The Right Honourable Gentleman has asked some important questions. He is absolutely right. Legislation is never the only answer or the only solution, not just on issues of this nature, but wider safeguarding, community measures, and the responses that are put in place, which brings me on to community responders, police officers, backing our police, but also resourcing those that keep our communities, people and our country safe. It is right. And in fact, with Thames Valley Police this morning, when I met with the Chief Constable, John Campbell, again, that is a conversation that I had. I was in touch with him over the weekend, and I've had that assurance that they are well supported in terms of the resources that they need. They're dealing with a live investigation. Obviously, this investigation is now a CT investigation, but even so, they have given me that assurance. But there are a number of other things as well, points to make, just on this front too. When it comes to violence of all nature, serious violence, and the Right Honourable Gentleman mentioned Serious Violence Board, we do now, of course, have the National Policing Board, which has effectively taken over that remit. And the National Policing Board has already met several times, even through in recent weeks as well, to discuss not just policing, but crime and the overall crime strategy that the government is taking from a holistic perspective. That also covers the Ministry of Justice side, the end-to-end aspect of the criminal justice system, how offenders are treated. And the Right Honourable Gentleman has also spoken about work that is required around de-radicalisation in prisons and the work that needs to take place, building upon Prevent, building upon safeguards that exist already, but these are evolving issues in terms of the type of skills that are needed, the resources obviously that are needed, but the type of techniques that need to be invested in terms of de-radicalisation and prevent work. That is something that is continuous. There is never one solution at all in terms of how to de-radicalise individuals. There are a range of tools, a range of techniques and a range of programmes in place. It is right that we continue to review that and work with that. And of course, there is a great deal of work, as the honourable gentleman will know, that's taking place around the review of Prevent right now. His final comment and point related to the Security Committee, that of course is taking place in terms of the appointment to the committee, and an announcement will be made in due course as to when that will be coming forward.
Record.
I invite the House to join with me in sending our deepest sympathy to the friends and family of James Furlong and to the staff and pupils of the